As I said in the last video, Guru Gobind Singh is considered to be the most important guru after Guru Nanak for the Sikhs. He is the 10th guru in the line of succession. He became guru in 1708. Apparently nobody knows exactly when he was born, so that's sort of interesting. Guru Gobind Singh had a little bit of a different background than some of the earlier gurus, particularly Guru Nanak. He was trained in military techniques as a young man, and in Sikh art, he is traditionally represented as a worldly prince, ready for battle. I mean, in that sense, he's similar to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, the Hindu book, the Bhagavad Gita, who is a worldly prince. And even though Sikhs originated as a religious bridge between Hindus and Muslims, over time they developed conflicts with their neighbors, and also the ownership or the rulership of that part of the Indian subcontinent where the Sikhs were prevalent, that is the Punjab region, changed hands, and it switched from being predominantly Hindu, or at least under Hindu control, to being under the control of rulers who were Muslims, in particular a group of Muslims called the Mughals. And so the Sikhs fought several battles led by Gobind Singh against Mughal rulers, though eventually Gobind Singh made peace with them. Sikhism was never a religion where they were seeking to spread their beliefs at the point of the sword. However, they were not opposed at all to defending themselves. And Gobind Singh is the most important guru after the founder, Guru Nanak. He is particularly important for two innovations. The first was the creation of the Khalsa, or the community. We'll talk about that in a second. And also, he was the one who designated the Adi Granth. Remember the sacred scripture of Sikhism? Guru Gobind Singh designated the Adi Granth as his successor guru. In other words, I said in the first video that the first 10 gurus were different from the 11th. The 11th guru, the currently reigning guru, if you can use the word reigning, is a book. So the Adi Granth is considered to be the embodiment of the wisdom of all the gurus, the first 10 gurus, and there have been no other human gurus after Guru Gobind Singh. And so that was definitely an innovation that he implemented. Okay, so in the year 1699, Guru Gobind Singh saw that there needed to be a greater amount of loyalty and cohesion among the Sikhs in the face of various challenges. Otherwise, he was worried the community would fall apart. And so he got up in front of the community. On one occasion, they were gathered together at a festival, and he challenged any Sikh who was ready to die for him to come forward. If you want to die, he's holding up a sword. And if you'll notice, some of the symbolism of Sikhism includes a sword, and this goes back to this incident. So he said, anybody who wants to, who's ready to die for me, come forward. Well, there wasn't a whole lot of movement at first, but eventually one man stepped forward, and he entered a tent with Gobind Singh, and then after a couple of minutes, Gobind Singh emerged from the tent by himself. The man was not with him, and there was blood on Gobind Singh's sword. And he said, okay, who else volunteers? Well, somebody else volunteered, and then somebody else. Eventually, there were 5 men who volunteered. They went one by one into the tent with Gobind Singh, and every time he emerged from the tent with a bloody sword. Finally, after the 5th man had gone in, Guru Gobind Singh came out with all 5 of the men who had gone in. They were not dead. And he said, this is the kind of loyalty that the community needed. These 5 men are praised in Sikh thought to this day, and they're called the Panj Pyare. Panj Pyare, which means the beloved five. Panj is five. Think of the pente in Greek. It also means five. Remember, it's an Indo-European language. Okay, so the Panj Pyare are the beloved five, and these are the original five members of what Gobind Singh called the Khalsa, or the community. The Khalsa, or the community of Sikhs. So after the beloved five, others volunteered to join the Khalsa, and you could be a member of the larger Sikh community and not be a member of the Khalsa. If you volunteered to become a member of the Khalsa, there were other kind of rituals that you had to go through. Today, the Khalsa, people who are Sikhs who are part of the Khalsa, represent something like 70% of modern Sikhs. The larger Sikh community, including the Khalsa, but also those outside the Khalsa, are called the Panth, P-A-N-T-H. So there are about 26 million Sikhs in the world today. They are concentrated in the Punjab region still, but there are many spread throughout Europe and throughout the United States and other parts of the world as well. Sikhs, I should say this, Sikhs are often, or at least sometimes, confused with Muslims because of their dress. Sikhs wear turbans, Sikh men wear turbans and have beards, and they're sometimes confused with Muslims. But there are differences in the types of turbans that they wear, and their belief system is very different. Okay. As I said, Guru Gobind Singh had two religious innovations. One was the creation of the Khalsa, or the sacred community. The second innovation was the decision not to appoint a human successor, but to designate the sacred scripture, the Adi Granth, as his successor guru. And then as the guru of the Sikhs, that is the leader of the Sikhs, the sacred scripture is often referred to not as Adi Granth, which means first book, but as Sri Guru Granth Sahib, Holy Master Teacher Book. Okay, and so what's in the Adi Granth? How was it supplemented? Remember that Guru Arjan had put the book together in the first place. He was the fifth guru. Well, after Gobind Singh died, or actually before his death, he began supplementing the Adi Granth with other writings. He put in writings of the ninth guru. Gurus 6 through 8 didn't leave behind any writings. They were, at least some of them were fairly young, and others just didn't leave behind any writings. So the writings of the ninth guru were put into the Adi Granth. Guru Gobind Singh himself wrote a number of hymns and prayers and things like that. However, he didn't insert those into the Adi Granth. But not surprisingly, his writings were considered to be very important, if in many cases sacred, by his successors. So Guru Gobind Singh took the existing Adi Granth, added the words of the ninth guru, added additional poems and other writings, and then his words were combined in a separate book called the Dasam Granth. Dasam Granth, okay, and Dasam means 10, which is, so it's the 10th book, the book of the 10th guru, right? And most Sikhs don't view, let me say, the Dasam Granth contains the writings of Gobind Singh, but it contains a number of other writings as well. Most Sikhs don't view the Dasam Granth as scripture, although there is a group of Sikhs who do. However, even if they don't view the entire Dasam Granth as scripture, they do acknowledge those portions of the Dasam Granth that were written by Gobind Singh to be scripture. And in fact, those portions of some of the portions of Guru Gobind Singh's words that are found in the Dasam Granth are recited in Sikh daily prayers. And in modern Sikh worship, the Adi Granth, the book, is placed on a chair in the center of the Gurdwara. Remember, that's the name of the Sikh temple or Sikh holy site. Not holy site, the Sikh place of worship. And originally it was reserved for human gurus, but now it is the Adi Granth is placed there. There's a third collection of Sikh holy writings or important texts. There's the Adi Granth, the Dasam Granth, and the third collection of Sikh texts is called the Rahit. The Rahit. And it contains instructions for performing rituals, standards for Sikh living, and so forth. Going back to Guru Nanak, the founder of Sikhism, there's an interesting historical development that has to do not so much with him, but with his son. He had a son who came to be called Sri Chand. Sri means master. Chand, C-H-A-N-D. Supposedly, Sri Chand's dates are 1494 to 1643, which would make him 149 years old when he died. Well, I don't know that he lived 149 years, but these are the traditional dates. At any rate, Sri Chand was a founder of one of the branches of Sikhism called the Udasi order. Udasi order. And the Udasi order valued separation from society. You remember the Shramana movement we've talked about with Buddhism, Jainism, Hinduism. Like the Shramanas, Sri Chand believed that separation from society was a good thing for getting in touch with God. He valued asceticism and celibacy, unlike the vast majority of the Sikhs. However, he did support Sikh teachings and guarded Sikh holy sites. And so the Udasis came to be a group that would guard Sikh holy sites from those who would seek to defile them. It's sort of like the Templars in Christianity during the Middle Ages. They were a religious organization in the Roman Catholic Church that would guard pilgrims on their way to visit holy sites, and also guarded holy sites that had been captured by the Crusaders. And so in a similar way, the Udasi order existed down through the centuries, guarding these Sikh holy sites. Well, in the early 20th century, mainstream Sikhs decided that the Udasis weren't Sikh enough for them. Their beliefs were too distant from what had become traditional Sikh beliefs. And they expelled the Udasis from their shrines, and the Udasis came to identify more as Hindus than as Sikhs. So that's just an interesting historical development. At least I think it's interesting. That's why I told you. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Sikh worship. As I said before, Sikhs worship in a building called the Gurdwara, which means the dwara of the gurus, gur. And unlike traditional Hindu temples, which have only one door, Sikh Gurdwaras have doors on all four sides. And this is symbolic. It symbolizes Sikhs' openness to all people, including adherents of all four known religious traditions of northern India. When Sikhism was founded, the four known traditions were Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, and of course Sikhism. And Sikhs are also open to all castes, and so they reject the caste system that has been traditional. It was traditional in India. All right, Sikhs today, and going back for centuries, follow a set of guidelines that are sometimes called the 5 Ks, because in Punjabi, these 5 words all start with the letter K. And the 5 Ks are these. The first K is Kes, which is uncut hair. And so you will see Sikh men in particular will not cut their hair. They'll wrap it up in a turban on top of their heads. but they don't cut their hair. This is a symbol of their faith. And I should say that not cutting hair is also something that is practiced in other religious traditions as well. I have a friend who's Navajo, and he says that for Navajo boys and men, they also will at least go for periods of time and not cut their hair, and this is symbolic of their connection to the spirits, the spirit world. The second K in Sikhism is Kanga. K-A-N-G-H-A. This is a comb, a wooden comb that Sikhs always carry with them. I guess if you have long hair, you need to have a comb with you. Third is Kara. This is a steel bracelet that they wear. Okay. There's Kirpan. This is a short sword that Sikhs always have with them. We'll talk more about that in a second. And then the Kakh, which is a pair of shorts that is worn under the clothes. So these are the 5 Ks that many Sikhs will wear, and or observe. I guess you wear your hair. And the sword, the short sword, is interesting because obviously, if you're a Sikh, you can't fly on a plane carrying a sword, and also, you can't go to a courthouse and various other things like this. And so, many Sikhs have adapted this custom to having a very, very short little sword that is not made out of metal. Maybe it's made out of plastic or something. I'm not sure, wood. And it's sewn into the clothes, so you can't pull it out, and so it's not a weapon. But anyway, these are the 5 Ks that many Sikh individuals will observe to this day. Now, Sikhs, as I said, they originated in a region of India that at the time was populated by Hindus. Guru Nanak himself was born into a Hindu family, and not surprisingly then, Sikhism borrows many of its beliefs, or shares many of its beliefs, with other religious traditions, including Hinduism, Buddhism, and so forth. And so Sikhs believe in reincarnation, samsara, and they seek release or liberation, moksha, from the cycle of rebirth. But how do they go about seeking this release? They don't do it necessarily through striving to do good deeds. Certainly they want to do that. But the main way they seek release from the cycle of rebirth is through devotional praise of God and by meditation on the divine name. And so this is reminiscent of the bhakti yoga in Hinduism, the devotion of one particular Hindu god or goddess, and meditation, repetition of the divine name or divine mantra. So this is something that Sikhs have in common with Hindus, but also with Buddhists to some extent. At least the meditation part of it they share with Buddhists as well. Okay, the Adi Granth, the sacred text of Sikhs, begins with a summary of Sikh doctrine called the Mool mantra, something that's repeated over and over again, and it's recited during morning prayers. And this is what it says: there is one supreme being, the eternal reality, the Creator, without fear and devoid of enmity, immortal, never incarnated, self-existent, known by grace through the Guru, the Eternal One from the beginning, through all time, present now, the everlasting reality. And so gurus will recite this mantra during their morning prayers. Sikhs view God as, so I guess it should say, I don't think I've said it explicitly, it should be obvious that Sikhs are monotheists. They believe in only one God. Guru Nanak rejected the notion of multiple gods and goddesses. As I said, that this was similar to those Hindus who see the Brahman as the ultimate divinity underlying all the gods and goddesses. Sikhs go the next step and don't even talk about the other gods and goddesses, but rather see God as one who is beyond time and without form, and he's neither male nor female. I said he, that's kind of silly. God is neither male nor female. Sikhs often refer to God as the Guru, or the Wahe Guru, which means wonderful teacher, among other titles. And Sikhs see God as creator, preserver, and destroyer, and so in this sense, God in Sikhism fulfills all three roles of the Hindu Trimurti. Remember the Trimurti that we talked about last week. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, creator, preserver, and destroyer. In Sikhism, their one God fulfills all those roles. Though God is separate from creation, God is immanent in creation. That is, God can be sensed, can be felt, can be encountered in creation, and thus God is approachable through loving devotion. Sikhs advocate kindness to all living things, but they also believe humans are especially dear to God and that other creatures are put on earth to provide for humans. Thus, Sikhs are not opposed to eating meat. Now, many Sikhs are vegetarians, like many Hindus are, but not all Hindus, and all Sikhs are not vegetarians, unlike Jains and Buddhists, typically. So that's an interesting distinction among these different religions that originated in the Indian subcontinent. For Sikhs, the primary problem with humans is something that's called haumai. Running out of space. Okay, haumai, we'll put it right here. Haumai is a word that can be translated as egoism, self-reliance, pride. It's focused on the self, and it manifests itself in lust and greed for the world, anger and pride, and attachment. Remember that the doctrine of non-attachment is very important in Buddhism, and so this idea of rejecting these sins or vices. These are called the 5 vices of Sikhism, or they're sometimes just called the 5 thieves because they steal your life from you. Lust, anger, greed, attachment, and pride. Compare that list with the list of the 7 deadly sins in Christianity, specifically in Roman Catholicism and Christianity. So these are the 5 vices or 5 thieves that rob you of your life, potentially. And so these vices distance people from God. They separate people from God, and they doom them to continue in samsara, the cycle of regeneration, of rebirth, until you can rid yourself of these. You're going to continue in samsara. Maya, in Hinduism, we talked about Maya is a Sanskrit word that means illusion. Sikhs also believe in Maya, but they mean something different. In Hinduism, Maya is, they believe that the world itself is unreal. The things around you that you see are unreal. In Sikhism, the idea is not that the world is unreal, but that the values of the world are unreal. And those values of the world are none other than those 5 vices: lust, anger, greed, attachment, and pride. In contrast to the 5 vices, or 5 thieves, there are 5 virtues. And these 5 virtues are truth, contentment, compassion, humility, and love of God. And so Sikhs try to follow these 5 virtues and manifest these 5 virtues in their lives and try to rid their lives of the 5 thieves. All right, I'm going to stop here, and we'll come back and talk a little bit more about Sikhism in the next video.